Open heart, open mind. Hello everyone. Again, a warm welcome to the weekly discussion on the Sattva channel. Perhaps now many of you know it is the official online platform of the Sattva project with the purpose of bringing Dharma to you and bridging Dharma with you. Myself, Samiksha Mishram.
I'm Sherab Wong, the co-founder of the Saddharma project.
I'm the Sattva Youth, which is the Buddhist youth program initiated by the Sattva project. This is a series of dialogue called Saddharma and Saddhama, Sanskrit Pali Buddhism in dialogue, and our topic of tonight's discussion is what is Prajñā in Sanskrit or Paññā in Pali, which is generally translated as wisdom. Before we begin to our discussion, first of all, on behalf of the Sattva project, I would like to thank our streamer sponsor and media partner, Durian Asian and Durian FM, for supporting, and also Brother Chong, our broadcast director for operating all the technical issues in the background and who tries to make this session possible without any technical error. Brother Chong, would you like to say hi to our audience?
Hello everyone, welcome to our dialogue this evening, and please do like and share so that more people can benefit from our session today. And for those who are watching later in YouTube, please do like and subscribe as well. And now back to you guys.
Thank you, brother. So now it's my honor to introduce all our guest speakers. Uh, okay. Thank you. Let's begin this session with a brief introduction of the guest speakers. Well, I want to apologize first for repeating for some people who those already know about our guest speakers. But this is just for the sake of our new friends out there joining first time. So please do bear with me. So first, I would like to introduce to you Myong An Sunim. Myong An Sunim is a Zen monk. He's from Kwan School of Zen. He's the advisor of the Sattva project. Myong An Sunim, usually called Sunim, this is an honorific term in Korean language, was born to a Chinese family in Malaysia in 1959. Sunim has received his education in the UK, culminating with an MBA and worked in finance. Sunim began his meditation practice in 1992 after meeting his first Zen master, Seong San in HK. He was ordained as a monk in 1997 and spent the next 16 years in the Korea doing intensive meditation retreats. Sunim received Inca, the authorization to teach Kung Ans and lead retreats from two Zen masters in 2015. Sunim has over 30,000 hours of meditation experience. He teaches mindfulness and Zen in Penang and internationally. His teaching approach combines the wisdom of the ancient teachers with the science of meditation to arrive at ways of practice that are well suited to our contemporary lifestyle. Sunim, a warm welcome to the session. Our second guest speaker is Mitruev. Mitruev is a translator from the Tibetan language. He has studied at the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies in Varanasi from 1995 to 2005, where he learned Tibetan history, poetry, Buddhist philosophy, Tibetan language, Sanskrit, and Hindi. Bem received the degree of Acharya, Master of Philosophy. He currently works as a translator for the Buddhist teachers who come to Russia to teach. Welcome to the session. Well, our third guest speaker is Dr. Giuliano. I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm sorry. Well, Dr. Giuliano has obtained PhD in Indological Studies, University of Turin. He has completed MA in Indian Religions and Philosophies. He is a lecturer at the International PhD Program in Textual Buddhist Studies, Mahidol University. He is a translator and lecturer at the Fundación Maitreya. Welcome.
Hello.
So, first of all, I'd like to say that due to unforeseen circumstances, Dr. Christine will not be joining us to be the moderator for tonight, and as well as Bigu Janamboli. So, me and Samiksha Mishram will be your moderator for tonight. Okay. So, to start the conversation, our first question will be, what is Prajñā or Paññā? According to you, maybe we can start with Giuliano.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Unexpected. Okay. Well, I would talk about Paññā, of course, from what I more familiar with, and namely the Pali tradition, and starting with the Pali Canon, Sutta, and Abhidhamma definitions. You already touched in the previous. We already touched in the previous sessions the meaning of Paññā in relation with Sila and Samadhi. So this is, I think, the first standpoint that we need to rely upon, namely that we don't have Paññā if we don't have Sila and Samadhi. All together represent the Eightfold Path, the backbone of the Eightfold Path. So we know that we have what we call Paññā. We can translate as wisdom. I do prefer actually something like penetrative knowledge or deep understanding, profound understanding. Yeah, I think that for a definition, maybe the term itself should be taken into consideration. Paññā is from the verb pajjanati, that means pla plus janati. Janati is to know. Pa intensifies the meaning of the verb to know. So we have like knowing deeply, knowing actually as things are. No, it is glosed as yata bhutan jnanadasanam, the knowledge and vision of the way things are, of reality. So it's a deep knowledge. This deep knowledge is strictly related to ethics, sila, and to samadhi, that we can call concentration, or all the set of meditative techniques that are employed in the Buddhist path, in the path to freedom, to liberation, to final liberation. So I think that this is a starting point that I would actually base anything on Paññā about. Speaking of this, I think maybe another angle that we can approach Paññā from is it's a relationship with liberation itself, so the ultimate goal, Paññā and Nibbana. This is, I think, something very important. How, in a way, Paññā already represents Nibbana. Is the last step, is the first and last step to Nibbana. In a way, is what remains after everything fades out. Paññā is something that remains. It's not something that there is no liberated being without Paññā or without Prajñā. This is another point, and another one. I think that maybe I hope that we'll have time during this conversation to touch these points, like Paññā in the list that we have in the canon, Pali or Sanskrit canon, in the Tipitaka or Tripitaka. So in lists like the Indriya, the faculties, or the balas, the five forces, strengths, powers, or five faculties, we have Paññā as the culminating point of this list. So this is quite important. And another one that I think will emerge anyway is a Paññā in a contraposition with two moha, delusion, ignorance. It's one of the definitions that we have in the Dhammasangani, this important Abhidhamma text, one of the 7 Abhidhamma text that we have in the canon, the Dhammasankani says that one of the definitions of Paññā is amoha, absence of delusion. So I think that in order to understand what this wisdom or this penetrating, this profound understanding is by seeing what is not. It's not delusion. Delusion is dispelled. So this is, I think, is a foundation that we need to depend upon to understand Paññā. So yes, I think for the time being, this is a short introduction that I would like to give, and then I think we can touch more points later, I guess.
Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. So how about Brother Bem? Anything to add according to the Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism?
Well, actually, it was quite complete. I didn't have almost anything to add, because actually that's very, very true. Prajñā means it comes from the verb or the root jna, and it means to know. It means knowledge, and it's interesting. In Russian, we have the same verb root. And for example, there is a word znать, and if you listen, you will hear jna, zna. It's the same root. It comes from the same Indo-Aryan source. So it's quite interesting. And in the Mahayana, in the Sanskrit tradition, usually this prajna means to understand or perceive, to see something. And this way we can talk about many different kinds of wisdom. It can be wisdom that perceives or understands the samvriti satya, or the conventional truth or conventional reality, as some people translate the word satya. And we can also talk about realizing the ultimate truth, or paramartha satya. And in some regard, there is also another type of wisdom realizing how to bring about the welfare of sentient beings, the third kind. So it's basically about the practice of Mahayana, about means how to help the sentient beings. So yeah, basically that's understanding. Prajñā, or wisdom, as we usually translate it, means to understand something. And another thing I would like to add, and it was very good said by Professor Giuliano, that sometimes, as one of the scholars put it, not knowing is even better than knowing something wrongly or misunderstanding something. And that's one of the functions of the right wisdom, not only to remove not knowing, but also to remove wrong knowledge. And it's quite important in the Buddhist regard. I mean, in the understanding of anatman, in understanding of two kinds of selflessness.
Thank you, Ben. Very comprehensive interpretation of what is wisdom. And now, lastly but not least, Myong An Sunim, what is your view on wisdom? What is wisdom?
Well, I think Bem and Dr. Giuliano have explained it very, very clearly. For me, I just like to think of the word as the translation as wisdom, because for me it's easier to just kind of connect with it. And I think of it in very kind of, how do you say, lay people's way, that it's kind of like wisdom is something that you know when you see it, and it's not when you see something that's unwise. So really, I think wisdom is like learning from, having the ability to learn from other people's mistakes and then not repeating them, and also having the awareness when you are behaving unwisely and then perhaps either behaving or speaking unwisely, and then that time knowing what to do about it. So, yeah.
I want to ask, like the first, Dr. Giuliano said that first step of Prajñā and the last step of Prajñā, which relates to Nibbana, which ultimately relates to Nibbana. So, is there any basic difference between first step of wisdom and the last step of wisdom? Because ordinary wisdom and there must be some difference between the ultimate wisdom and ordinary wisdom, right?
Okay.
So how one should differentiate it? It's a quite a long way to go towards Nibbana.
That's a good one.
So the question is firstly directly to me.
Yeah, anyone can reflect on it.
Okay. So if anyone has an answer ready, please go ahead. And I will have more time to think about it.
I think I will wait. I will wait for you.
Okay.
Myong An Sunim. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just say something. So, let me just get you right. You want to know what's the beginning and end of wisdom? Is that right?
Yes.
That wisdom has a beginning and an end?
Or how about wisdom is something that's primarily there, there's no beginning, no end? We need to just realize.
I don't know. I'm just wondering what the question is.
Yeah, okay, let me repeat the question. I'm just quoting Dr. Giuliano. In the beginning, he said that there is a first step of wisdom and the last step of wisdom, which ultimately refers to Nibbana. So, you know, I'm just wondering that there is an ordinary kind of knowledge, we can say, but wisdom is something like, you know, which should be right in its nature. So what is the difference between our first step and the last step when we reach towards Nibbana?
So let me pose a question, analogous question to you. Okay. Have you been in love before, romantically?
No.
Okay. Other people have. You can imagine what it's like. You can see on the cinema, you know, this kind of romantic love. So, can you tell me when you are 25% in love, or 50% in love, or 100% in love? Can you gauge it? Even if you haven't, is it possible? Like when you meet your wife or your husband, some of you are married. When was the point that you knew that you were 100% in love with them? And when was it when you were 50%? It's not linear, is it?
It can't be sudden.
Yeah.
I don't know. It can't be sudden, like, okay, at this point of time, we can say now it's 100%.
So it's kind of like that, you know. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but we can't really plot wisdom on a XY curve and go, ooh, you practice more, it's like that. Somehow, wisdom is inherent in all of us, I believe. Okay. It's inherent in all of us. But our attachments to our deluded thinking, our anger, our desires cloud our thinking. So what we do is, if we are able to remove or let go, not remove, but just let go of these attachments, then our wisdom will naturally shine. Just like a lamp, you switch on the light and then the whole room brightens. But the light was always there.
So can we say that the so-called Prajñā or Paññā is something that is already perfected by itself? So what we need to do is only to realize and to attain and become one with it.
I think you have
there all the
the
time.
potential. You have the wisdom inside, but of course you can also develop greater wisdom through practice and experience, right? And you know, everybody has it. We don't need to be super educated, you know. super powerful. You can see wisdom in daily life if you look, right? It's a natural quality that we have inside us, and it exists in what we already have. So the key to realizing wisdom, my personal opinion, from what I've found, is to actually wake up to it and become more mindful of our mind states.
So now we are talking about the experience of the wisdom. So my next question is that how do we know that we have attained prajna or paññā? We know that we are falling in love, or we are heartbroken. We know that very well experientially. So my question to all of you is that how do we know that we have attained paññā?
Well, I think I've said my bit.
Well, there is one thing I would like to say. There is a fine difference between two Sanskrit words. If we talk in Sanskrit terms, one is prajñā, one is jnana, and they are a bit different. You see that there is a pra and jna. So there is a bit difference between these words. And when we talk about our, so to say, pure mind that is not stained by the kleshas or by anything else. This is usually that we call in Sanskrit text. Usually it is so we call jnana. This is some kind of basic mind, very basic mind, that is pure by its nature, because it's not obscured by the obscurations or any defilements or anything else. And in this regard, our mind and mind, for example, of Buddha is the same, because it's the basic qualities of our mind to understand and to be clear, to be unobscured. And in this regard, if you call this jnana, then there is no difference between me and Buddha, for example, because we have the same quality of mind. If mind had different qualities, it would be very difficult for us to obtain this different mind, because we do not have it now. And there is, as far as I understand, almost no way at all to change the quality of our mind to make it like mind of Buddha. That's why in Mahayana, usually we say that our mind, the basic mind, is the same as Buddha's. And the only thing we need to do is to remove defilements, to remove obscurations, and etc. When we talk about prajna, it's a bit different. That's a thing that you can't develop. For example, we talk about the Shrutamaya Prajñā. Shrutamaya Prajñā, that's the wisdom or kind of understanding that comes from listening or learning Buddha Dharma. You listen and you learn new things. Then we talk about Chintamaya Prajñā. Chintamaya, it's means like reflection or thinking or meditating, meaning like not meditating, meditational equipoise, but thinking about something. And then you understand something new. You develop new level of understanding. And this is also called new kind of wisdom. It's wisdom that comes from reasoning or logic or thinking and etc. And then there is third kind of prajna, and you can develop it. It's not that you at the very beginning you have this kind of deep understanding or deep wisdom. You can develop it. And the third one is bhavanamaya. That's come from bhavana. That's come from meditation. And that's how you develop this third kind of wisdom in order to understand the nature of things, in order to understand how everything is in reality. You need to develop this kind of wisdom. And one wisdom, the first one, is base for the second one, and the second is base for the third one. And this understanding of the third one penetrates the nature of all the things and actually leads to the enlightenment. Not it alone, of course, but it's one of the main factors that lead us to the enlightenment. So usually that's how we grade, or that's the types or kinds of wisdom when we talk about them in the Buddha Dharma. 3 kinds of wisdom. Before I told the division into 3, that is different. Now it's second kind of division of wisdoms in the Buddha Dharma and in Mahayana particularly.
Thank you, Brother Ben. Giuliano, how about interpretation according to the Pali tradition?
Yeah, I think yes, that we should keep in mind the classifications in many ways. One thing, maybe since we are using language and we need to deal with the limits of language, I think that maybe attainment is not the best word that we should use with Paññā or Prajñā. It's more a kind of cultivation, indeed. There is more a kind of cultivation, so an active cultivation, and a kind of spontaneous flourishing, or something that to some extent is already present. We have, in the Eightfold Path, we have a samadhi from the very beginning, right view. So one needs a right view. There are some texts that says that actually first one should start with there is a sentence which is Sabbe Dhamma Nalam Abhinivesaya. Nothing is worthy of attachment, of craving. Once one understands that, then there is the application of Paññā. Then there is the abhijanati, so the verb to know deeply, completely, parijanati all around completely, and pajanati to penetrate something as it is, and to understand the real nature of everything. But first there must be an understanding that attachment, craving is a burden, is an obstacle. No? So from that viewpoint, one can develop Paññā, but at the same time, that is already a manifestation of Paññā. That point, Samadhi is already an understanding, no? That there is a dukkha and there is the end of dukkha. Without that framework, we don't have a compass to move, and that compass is already Paññā. I may think of a text, for instance, the Danta Bhumi Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, wherein the Buddha gives the example of the elephant training an elephant. He says that a teacher approaches an elephant and softly speaks to his ear. No, he's very kind and so on. He says very kind words in a very kind way. And the elephant understands that kindness, that generosity, and obeys, trusts the teacher, the master. So this applies to the training, to the path itself. One at the beginning, one doesn't have the mature, ripe Paññā that understands things as they are, but there is that hint that actually shows in a way that the path goes to liberation of the mind, and to follow that path, trust, faith in the Buddha is necessary. And in that point, Paññā, this embryonic manifestation of Paññā is Saddha or Shraddha, faith. Faith is not just an adherence and or obedience to some principle, but it's already a leap into Paññā, into wisdom. And therefore is a form, an embryonic form of wisdom. One doesn't really know perfectly, but already feels what the path is and why the path is necessary.
Samiksha, do you have any question to follow up?
Yeah. How one could integrate wisdom and compassion? Like generally, we have this misconception that wisdom is sort of intellectual understanding, and sometimes we forgot that our kindness or our compassion part is somewhere left out. So how one should integrate these two things together?
And plus the faith that Dr. Giuliani, you mentioned just now, faith. how to integrate these three together then. The wisdom, faith, and maybe karuna or compassion, do we have to do three different practices, or we can integrate them into one specific integral practices? Yeah. As everyone will want the quick fix today nowadays, one for all and all for one. One package. In one practice we do these three things and attain these three things.
That's interesting point about Shraddha, about the faith. Because in some Mahayana sutras, Buddha said that all scholars and bhikshus or monks do not trust my words only because I say them. Like a goldsmith checks the gold, like cutting and burning and polishing it. The same way you should analyze my words and accept them, but not because of faith or because of respect to me. So it seems to me that when we talk about this kind of faith, it's not faith in our usual ordinary understanding. It seems to me it's like more like trust. We understand that Buddha tells us truth. We can check it on our mediocre level, and then we understand that he is telling truth, and then we rely on him, not because we believe, but because we trust. It seems to me that it worked this way, not that it's just blind faith and I like Buddha very much, he is very nice talker, and I will put my faith in him, I will believe him. It's more like trust in a reliable source of knowledge, of understanding. It seems to me like that, and so that I have began talking. I will continue with the question of Samiksha. I'm sorry. Yes, of course. In Mahayana, we say that there must be two aspects to the path, to the practice. You cannot obtain the Buddhahood without the method. So wisdom means wisdom, understanding of the nature of the things, or tathata, and or shunyata, different words but the same meaning. But of course you need karuna and maitri, because without love and compassion, without these two things, you will not be able to obtain the enlightenment. And it's very, very tricky, because you need to join these two aspects in your practice, because one helps another and another helps the first one. Without these two, it's not possible to move on the way to obtain Buddhahood. At least that's how they say, for example, in Bhavanakrama, in one of the famous texts about meditation, written by Shantarakshita.
Kamalshila.
Oh, Kamalashila, I'm sorry. Kamalashila, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Myong An Sunim, what's your view on this? How to integrate karuna and wisdom, compassion, loving kindness, and wisdom, and how to have faith in our practice of these two?
Yeah, I think Bam put it very well, that, the Buddha said you have to rely on the putting into practice what you've heard. And if it works for you, then adopt it. If it doesn't, then you find that it's not reflected in your experience, it's not true for you, then let it go. It then doesn't matter who it's coming from, whether it's from a very esteemed monk or nun or teacher or whoever it is. We have to know for ourselves our own experience of what the teaching guides us to. So having said that, I think wisdom and compassion are like the two wings of a bird. If you only kind of focus on wisdom, it's a very kind of dry, can be dry and theoretical. But if you combine it with compassion, then there can be benefit for all, because you have the wisdom, and then compassion is an active component. It's you wish to relieve the suffering that you encounter, or try to your best to, and then the wisdom helps you to do that. So as you continue to practice wisdom, compassion, as well as meditation, then with the experience of these things revealing the truth to you, your faith will grow. So your faith will grow from practice, and your practice will become stronger due to your faith. So it's like a self-reinforcing cycle.
Thank you, Myong An Sunim. Giuliano?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Giuliano. Yeah.
So I had in this case, since we touched these other things about Saddhama faith, I should point out that I used to use faith, especially at the beginning, as a translation, though I'm aware that is a tricky translation in many ways. But I'm from a Christian country myself. So when I use the word faith, people overreact. And usually they ask questions. And so for me, that's a good opportunity to go deeper into the tissue there. And I say yes, it's difficult to say what Sada is. Probably trust is a good translation, though actually trust is something that we may underestimate. You know, we think, okay, I trust him and so on, but here there is a very strong leap. And in Pali we have this, not only in Pali, but we have these two kind of faiths of forms of trust in a way. One is a Saddha, another one is Aveccha Pasada, which is the kind of trust or really relying upon is from the verb to sit, pasidati. So really relying upon someone on something because you really know. After checking, you can actually trust. And as in the example of the elephant before, it's also something innate in a way, something that is unborn in beings. No, that is it's a potential in a way. It's like we know, but we don't know, and it's a sort of insight. You know? In the example before, the Buddha says it just needs to speak kindly to a person. So that kindness, in a way, shows the nature of the Buddha. This may goes to the I would say the combination of the integration of compassion and wisdom, karuna and paññā, because the nature of the Buddha is these two qualities. So these are the two qualities that remain in a Buddha after everything else is let go of. So and we know that so the Buddha uses this knowing, this deep, profound knowing, to understand the reality of things, emptiness, and to be liberated. At the same time, later on, he has doubt about teaching or not. And the reason why the Buddha teaches is that he's Sabbapanabhuta Hitanukampin. So he's interested, he moves towards the benefit, the well-being of all beings. It's anukampa for compassion is usually translated as compassionate or anukampa compassion, but it's a movement, it's an intention. So it's not merely an emotion, something I would say quite more authentic than an emotion, because there is intention to offer freedom and ultimate happiness to all beings. To I would say to eliminate the suffering of all beings. So I think this is a way how they are integrated. Of course, they are integrated not only in the Buddha. In the Buddha, we have this culmination of these qualities, because we have ultimate Prajñā, Paññā, ultimate wisdom, and we have the ultimate compassion. But of course, they go hand in hand in a very good balance throughout the practice, throughout the path. So during the path, they must be cultivated in different ways. Maybe in the Pali tradition, there is a little more emphasis on metta, but the four immeasurables or the four abodes are cultivated all together. Metta, karuna, mudita, and upekka, or upeksha in Sanskrit. So they are cultivated together because, of course, there is on the one hand there is this need to contemplate reality, and on the other hand there is this need to open the heart to all beings. So it's in a way it's the goal, but it's also an instrument of practice. The need to combine wisdom and compassion.
So any particular practice or method that we can specifically do so that we can integrate this karuna and prajna together, and put our faith into that kind of practice. Can you give us an example of certain practice that we can do to attain wisdom and compassion at once? Yeah. Brother Ben, do you have any recommendation?
Well, at once, it's kind of tricky to do everything at once. Nowadays, people live very fast life, and they want to do everything at once.
Yeah,
Like they always try to find shortcuts and some methods to perform like 2 or 3 tasks at the same time. But it seems to me if you want to do something good, better do it one by one. if you want to do something, first you do first thing. It's priority, and then you do the second thing. If you do everything at once, probably you will not be able to succeed in anything at all. But that's me. I come from the different age. We used to do everything in a different way, not like people do it right now, like before. And it seems to me that these two things are helping each other. And what it means when we talk about karuna in the Mahayana tradition, it means like wish to liberate all the sentient beings of the sufferings and causes of suffering. And this is the main impetus. This is the main driving force behind the Mahayana Buddhist practice. Because you do your practice because you understand on your own example that you are suffering. All of us are suffering. Understanding or not understanding, we all suffer. And all those beings, and let's talk about people, because we cannot see neither gods nor demons or spirits or anything else. We can see animals and human beings, and probably it would be easier to talk about them. We can see that a lot of people and animals especially suffer a lot. They suffer constantly, and this understanding my own suffering could be projected, could be understood by the way of my own suffering. I can understand the sufferings of those beings. And of course, understanding that I am the same as those beings. They are not different from me. They suffer in the same way. They have the same nature, the same feelings, the same emotions. That's what drives the Mahayana practice. You want to help them. And then you have to use your wisdom, because in order to help somebody, you need to understand how to do it. Otherwise, there are a lot of cases when people who would like to help only harm. I can bring a lot of examples when such things happen. And that's why you need to understand what the problem is, what is the root of the problem. And that's when the wisdom again plays major role, because most of the problems that we have comes from misunderstanding. That's what we call in Sanskrit dosh prajñā. It means bad or false or faulty wisdom, faulty understanding of the nature of things. We think that things exist in one way, but in reality they exist in different way. And this is conflict between how we see the things and how they exist. And this kind of misunderstanding drives us to be attached to the things, or to dislike something. And this kind of emotions or this kind of confusion leads to actions. actions that create bad karma, actions that create our suffering, and so it's endless. And that's how we probably that's how it's necessary to understand and try to develop wisdom and compassion for the Dharma practice. At least that's how I see it.
So, Ben, you, according to your understanding, we need to practice or cultivate Prajñā and Karuna or Maitri separately. Can we integrate into one like specific meditation or specific method, or we can't do that?
Well, I don't know. Should I talk about that or not? When
Just briefly.
when we talk about tantric meditation, that's usually when we talk about incorporation or uniting two practices at the same time. But I do not think is it beneficial or is it of any use to talk about this now, because it's kind of not even purely Mahayana. Mostly it deals with the Vajrayana practices. And I think probably it's out of the scope of today's dialogue, maybe. I'm not sure. Advise me, please, Sherab.
Okay, then we'll leave it there. And how about Giuliano? Is there any particular practice that we can use to cultivate wisdom and compassion together in the Pali tradition? Yeah.
Okay. So I think that Ben's advice applies here as well. So to practice any kind of practice of technique specifically, and thinking as combining not as something done intentionally all the time, because there is the risk of confusion, but as I would say, as maintaining the qualities together. So, for instance, to be a little more explicit, I think that practice like the 4 Brahma Viharas, for instance, are necessary to be done, but specifically, so like the practice of metta and so on, the cultivation of compassion, karuna, and so on, must be done in the specific ways. And on the other hand, Paññā, one of the synonyms given for Paññā is a vipassana jnana, so the knowledge that comes out of a vipassana. And the verb pajjanati, for instance, is the most used term in the practice of the satipatthana, the cultivation of mindfulness. So in the specific techniques that are meant for vipassana and are also meant for samatha and samadhi, because in different ways this develops samadhi as well. The satipatthana method develops vipassana and samadhi, and these are based on and go towards Paññā. They cultivate Paññā. And I think that taking these two parts together, the practice of the Brahma Vihara and the practice of vipassana jnana, cultivating this kind of knowledge, Paññā, they gradually get closer and closer. So to say that, I think, maybe one example is simply that one of the outcomes of practicing Paññā, or all the instruments that lead to Paññā, is that there is an understanding of anatta, anatman, no self. This understanding of no self, of the absence of a separation of separate selves in other beings, helps a lot the sympathy and the empathy for the other beings, the intention to liberate other beings. Because once I'm trying to liberate myself, but I realize that there is no actual separation between myself and others, that very moment, my attempt to liberate myself becomes an attempt to liberate all beings. I'm not working only on myself. So the higher the understanding, I think, of anatta, no self, or shunyata, sunyata, and the deeper is also the practice of compassion. So at a certain point, they are not so separate. So I think that there must be pursued separately because there are specific techniques, and especially at the beginning, one needs to avoid confusion. But on the other hand, I think that the qualities become finer and finer to the point that they resemble each other. They are very similar to each other. So in a deep understanding, there is actually compassion. And one can feel that when practicing Vipassana, can feel Karuna, and when developing Karuna, can feel the understanding of things.
So we can achieve the same thing from two different ways, and
Yeah,
at the end you come back.
we are digging the ground from two different points. We are digging the art from, let's say, from New York and from Sydney, but at a certain point we meet there. The more we go closer to the center, and the more they are not New York and Sydney anymore, but they are that goal at the center.
Very beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. How about Myong An Sunim? Any practice that we can achieve? We practice one and so-called attain everything.
Oh, okay. Just so let me ask you this question. We're having the discussion of wisdom and compassion right now. Yeah. So is that wise and compassionate?
Is that wise and compassionate?
Yeah. Are we doing something that's wise and compassionate?
I think so. Is that a koan or what? Sorry.
That's just a simple question, but is it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
then that's your practice. But of course, I think what Bam and Dr. Giuliano have said is true. But also, I think one thing that we need to realize that wisdom and ignorance are not separate. Just like if there's right, there's wrong, there's dark, there's light, there's white, there's black. Okay, they're all opposite sides of the same coin. So when we realize this, then we realize this truth that a lot of people have realized for a long time, that wisdom does not exist on its own. It's all part of all our thing, put it that way. So cultivating, there are practices, I believe, which can help to cultivate your compassion, and like the metta meditation that the Buddha taught, and that will help to deepen your sense of empathy and compassion with others, take away the distinctions that you normally have between self and other. And from that, your wisdom will grow, because you can see that we're actually all interconnected, interdependent with everything. Nothing exists independently outside of ourselves. So when we realize that, that is also a source of wisdom. But there are things which, of course, support the cultivation of wisdom as well, like the 6 parameters, the 5 apart from the wisdom, like generosity, discipline, patience, effort, and meditation. So all these things support that. So in short, practice, and I think very important is that when we practice, this is a quote from Walt Whitman, an American author. Don't be judgmental. Be curious, but don't be judgmental. We're very good at judging things, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. This is good for me. But if you let go of that and you just have a sense of curiosity, whatever is arising, then your wisdom will also arise. So our wisdom and compassion are not necessarily dependent on how much you know. You can go to the simple farmer in the field who has absolutely no education, and he can have a lot of wisdom. Like the great Zen master in China, 6th patriarch, Hui Neng. He was completely uneducated, cannot read, cannot write, but then he was able to attain a deep insight. We call it enlightenment. So, yeah, I think the key thing is to practice, but without judgment and with acceptance and curiosity. Then your wisdom, compassion will grow.
Thank you, Sunim. So since now we are talking about like something like non-duality, like between samsara and nirvana, is the same? Ben, do you agree with this kind of notion? The non-dual notion, between samsara and nirvana.
Oh, it depends. Of course, it depends. It depends on what kind of understanding do you choose to rely on, because there are different levels of understanding for different people with different inclinations, abilities. You cannot use just one way of understanding or one way to see things for everybody. There are educated people, there are uneducated people, there are people with inclinations for meditation or people with inclination for study of books. They all are different. And that's why Buddha, when he was teaching, he taught a lot of different things. Usually they say in Mahayana that he taught like 84,000 of the divisions of teachings, because he had a lot of students with different abilities and with different inclinations and habits. And for all of them, in order to make their practice comfortable, he taught him a lot of things, and that's how you do it in the Buddhist practice. You choose what suits you, and maybe then you can move to the other thing, to the other level, or it will suit you until the end of your days. No difference. What I mean to say that different people see it differently, and probably they practice it differently. For some people, it's very important to understand what's white, what's black, what's good, what's not good, what's wholesome, what's not wholesome. For some people, it's more convenient to understand that all things are basically the same in their nature. And if you talk about white, you can talk about white only because there is black. Because comparing white and black, you understand that this is white because it's white comparing to the black. This is good because it's good only comparing to the bad. And if you take away this idea, this division about the good and bad, then basically these two things are same by the nature. But you see, it all depends. It all depends on how you understand on your, so to say, inclinations, on what you would like to practice and what you would like to see. It's not so easy to put it straightforward in one way. For example, if we talk about wisdom, of course we have this nature. We have this nature, this natural ability of mind to cognize things that couldn't be taken from us. But if you want to learn something in order to meditate, before you start meditate, probably you get some instructions from your teacher, how to sit, how to meditate, how to breathe, how to keep your back straight, and etc. I do not think that anybody could meditate without some explanation or some instructions. And in order to understand these instructions, you need to have this ability to understand. You need to have your wisdom. And in order to deeply penetrate the meaning of the meditation, how to meditate, what is the basis, foundation for the meditation, and what it will lead you to, you need to develop your wisdom. Without this development of this ability to understand, probably you will not understand anything. And if you do not understand something, there is a great risk that you will do it in not proper way. You will do it wrong. And what you do wrong brings the wrong result. And I think that nobody wants to get something wrong, to get something bad or something not intended instead what you wanted to get. There are a lot of things when people misunderstood something, And instead of obtaining something they wanted, they received something they didn't want. So probably we need to be a little bit how to say exact in the regard what we are discussing, because there are different levels and there are different people and there are different ways how we could engage or in this or that practice.
So before I ask you, Brother Ben, to delve deeper into the wisdom of non-duality later, according to Mahayana Buddhism, now I want to ask Dr. Giuliano, is there any, from the Theravada perspective or Pali tradition perspective, is there any so-called wisdom of non-duality exists in this tradition?
Okay. So I wouldn't say to the extent of equating samsara to nibbana or nirvana. I wouldn't say in this way, though this actually rings a bell, and now I'm going to go through that. So first of all, I would say that what is sometimes called the non-duality and so on is the overcoming of aversion, is abhyapada or dosa and so on. This kind of separation that actually becomes a conflict with the other beings or with reality itself or within oneself. There is actually something that I think resembles a little bit the I would say the coming together of samsara and nibbana, so the kind of non-duality in this sense. There is a term which is adhana paññā. So paññā is similar to Paññā, but it's pari plus ñā. So pari means all around, completely. So it's a kind of complete understanding, and literally would be a complete understanding of the stretch. Adhana is a stretch of time, a path, a stretch of a path, and so on. So the text in itself doesn't explain immediately the meaning. So I'll give you a little background if I have the time to do that. So this is the goal of the practice of the five balas or indriyas, faculties, the five faculties. So faith, saddha, virya, effort, mindfulness, sati, samadhi, concentration, and paññā, wisdom, are cultivated for, there is a list of the purposes. One is adhana paññā, so it's the complete understanding of the stretch, and the other one is asava kaya, the destruction, the dissolution of the flows, the poisons, so the defilements. And this is nibbana. The commentary says, another commentary actually, but still refer to the same term, adhana paññā, said this is nibbana itself, which is to be understood as an understanding of samsara. So it's actually, once there is this understanding of the stretch, samsara, there is nibbana. Is the complete, this paññā, complete understanding of samsara itself. It is called the stretch. I like to say that the path through suffering itself is understood. So right there is the possibility of for nibbana, nirvana. Within this kind of, like in a way, it's like if samsara, rather than becoming a sort of, I would say, prison, which actually is described as, becomes a map. And by looking at the map, one can understand the territory, and that is nibbana. So one can look, it's like, looking from a drone, all the territory around, and we are still there overviewing samsara. Nevertheless, that is nibbana. So I think this is the closest comparison that comes to my mind, of something that reminds of non-duality in terms of samsara and nibbana. Is penetrating samsara completely in order to reach nibbana. And nibbana itself is the penetration of samsara. It's not an escape from samsara, but it's the complete understanding. It's like really staying there and knowing samsara to the point where it reaches Nibbana.
Thank you, Giuliano. And back to Ben, Brother Ben. There is a Dharma door called non-duality wisdom in the Vimalakirti Divisa Sutra, So can you explain to us the wisdom of non-duality according to Mahayana tradition?
Well, as I said before, when we talk about something, especially Buddhism, you need to understand that there are many different meanings in one word. I mean, like many different levels of understanding the same term. And for example, if we talk about non-duality in Mahayana Buddhism, you need to understand that there is Chittamatra understanding, Madhyamaka understanding, and there is Vajrayana understanding. And all of them are kind of different. If we talk from the viewpoint of Chittamatra, it means that there is no duality between the subject and object. Because we have this karmic imprints in our mind that at the same time appear as a subject mind and the object mind. So this object appears in front of us, for example, in front of my visual organs, like something independent and something outside. But basically, Chittamatra say they are idealists. They say that there is no outer objects. It's our mind playing games, appearing
All mind's
in front of
projection.
us.
All
Yes,
mind's
it's
projection.
mind's projection, yeah. And it comes from the same vasana, from the same karmic imprint. That's how Chittamatra understand it. And when they say about non-duality, it's basic understanding that there is nothing but the mind. Everything is created by the mind. Everything is created out of the mind. And that's why in some sutras, Buddha says that all of the sensorical experience, all of the world is created by the mind. And it's interesting because, for example, if you look at Abhidharma Kosha, in the Abhidharma Kosha, Vasubandhu, who was Vaibhajika of Sautrantika, but later became Chittamatra, as Tibetan tradition says, he said that everything comes from karma. That all of the universes, all of the worlds come from karma. Now in Chittamatra, they say that everything comes from our mind. And it's interesting, if you look even further back, you will find a similar Sanskrit line that says non-Buddhist line that says that everything comes from Brahma, from the god Brahma. So you see, Buddhists changed the word Brahma to karma. Then some other Buddhists changed the word karma to chitta, to the mind. You see, and in Vajrayana teachings, it's taken even further. In Vajrayana Buddhism, some say that everything comes, it's like pure projection of our mind. Whatever we see is come from our mind, and if our mind is not pure, then we see samsara. And if you purify our mind, remove all the stains, then we will see everything like deity's mandala, like deity's this is mentioned, or Pele's, but I think it's maybe it's a bit too much for this talk. And if you talk to Mahayana, talk about Madhyamaka, that's another school of Buddhist philosophy, of Mahayana Buddhist philosophy. There are again two different understandings, because in one school, for example, non-duality means like there is non-duality of real existence and no real existence. There is no duality because there is no so-called real existence. Because no thing in this world, nothing exists really, subjectively, not relying on the other things, not relying on the mind that gives labels to the things, naming them. So it's a bit tricky. You need to understand. You need to develop this kind of wisdom. You need to obtain this kind of knowledge in order to understand what we're talking about. We cannot just say outright that it's the same in every Buddhist school. It's not true. It's not so, because everybody understands it's differently. For example, in Mahayana texts, it says that in Theravada tradition, when a person obtains Buddhahood, it ceases. It comes to an end, like a butter lamp. And when the butter is finished, the flame dies away. And I wanted to ask Dr. Giuliano, is it true? Is there such an understanding in Theravada tradition that when you become a Buddha, when you obtain the Buddhahood, you cease exist as a person? Is it true? Because that's what we studied in our philosophy program. It is said in Tibetan, "Marmeshwar Gurvashins," like a battery lamp that flickers and then dies away. The same way, the person who obtains the Buddhahood, when kleshas and karma is exhausted, the flame of consciousness comes to an end. Is it truly so?
There is at least in two ways. So there is also, there's been a discussion, especially about Vijnana, about consciousness. There is this, at some point we have this Anidasana Vijnana, which is the invisible consciousness. But there are some passages that say as even that one is abandoned. So it is described as the flame, the extinguishing of the flame. Nevertheless, I think that the most poignant descriptions are in the Chatuskoti. So when for instance, there is the dialogue with the Vacchagotta, and Vacchagotta asks what happens to a liberating mind. Where does he go? So, evam vimutashito panapo gotama bhikkhu inupapajjatiti. What is that? The mind of one who is liberated arises, and he says that arises does not apply. Upapajjatiti kovacha na upeti doesn't apply, doesn't make sense. Na upeti doesn't make sense at all. And then, of course, we have the second proposition of the Chatuskoti by Vacchagotta, which is then it does not arise. And the answer is that it does not arise, it does not apply. Then it arises and does not arise. And the answer of the Buddha is that it arises and does not arise, does not apply. And then the fourth proposition is that Vacchagotta says is neither it neither arises nor does not arise. And the answer of the Buddha is that even that doesn't arise and neither arises, does not arises, does not apply. So I think that this, of course, is a way to, is not a way not to answer the question, but is a way to place the answer beyond the logical possibility. So when we say that there is an extinguishing, then there is no person, okay, to some extent it's true, but of course this leads to one of the extremes, nihilism. So it can be misunderstood as nihilism. So therefore, the Buddha corrects that misdirection there, and so the Chatuskoti correct all the possible misdirections. The four possible misdirection, it means that through mere logic, the possibilities of logics are these four, and the Buddha says the liberation is beyond that. Basically this is the answer. I want to say something more about that. Okay. Yes. Okay. It slips in my mind now. There was something more about that. I think that could be important, but maybe I would say later. But I think this is basically what happens. That we cannot say that there is no. Okay. Yes, there is an example that I found interesting. Is from the Theravada tradition, the modern Theravada tradition. Actually, it's Luangpo Cha, Achan Cha, this renowned master in the Thai forest Sangha tradition, and once he was I would say criticized by his disciples because they said they was self-contradictory. So sometimes you say something, sometimes you say the opposite of that. So we never know what is actually true. And he answered that if I see that somebody is walking on a bridge and risking to fall down there, if I see there is a line to the left, I will say to him, go right. And if I see there is falling to the right, I would say go left. Of course, these are two self-contradictory, mutually contradictory instructions. Nevertheless, they are both true. So the Chatuskoti is not a way to avoid the answer, or to avoid the issue of what happens to the person with the liberation, of course, but is to place that condition, which is not a condition, beyond our speculation, because we have, of course, the tendency to speculate, to have some conjecture about what happens, and that needs to be dispelled with all the dittis, drishtis, all the opinions that we may produce with our conditioned mind. If it is beyond the conditioned mind, it cannot be answered by the conditioned mind.
Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. So I have one very quick question due to time constraint. Basically, we know that there's a non-duality wisdom from Buddhist tradition, as well there's a Advaita Vedanta from the Hindu tradition who talk about non-duality. So my short and quick question is that, what is the difference between these two, non-duality wisdom tradition in Hinduism and Buddhism? I think we need to practically make a difference between these two. Ben, can we start from you?
I'm sorry, I saw the question from Mattia.
Yeah, later that.
Later, okay.
Yeah, sure.
I see. Do you want me to start? Okay.
Yeah, quick one.
Well, could you again repeat the question, please? I was just thinking about them.
Okay, the tradition of non-duality tradition in Hinduism, Vedanta, and non-duality in Buddhism. What is the difference?
Well, it seems to me that the main difference, I didn't think that I have enough knowledge to answer this kind of questions, because basically I never deeply studied non-Buddhist Indian philosophy. Of course, we studied some in the institute, but I cannot say that I'm an expert or I have some kind of deep knowledge of the non-Buddhist Indian philosophical schools. But as far as I can see, when we talk about non-duality, from the Buddhist perspective, from the Buddhist point of view, we talk from the point of view of Anatman. We do not maintain that there is I, there is Atman, there is a truly existent self. And every understanding is based on this understanding of lack or lack of this self, or this I, of this Atma. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about non-duality, we talk about non-duality from this point of view, because this is one of the main points of the Buddhist philosophy. Even if you talk about Vaibhashika or Sautrantika or Chittamatra or Madhyamaka, no difference. All of these schools posit Anatman. They do it differently. They do it in completely different way, but all of them talk about Anatman, about the lack of this self, truly existent self. And I think that it's when you describe this point, the 2 points of view, I mean, like Buddhist and non-Buddhist non-duality, they sound a bit similar, but you must understand that the explanation must be underlined. It must be based on the Anatman, on the understanding of lack of self, of truly existent self. So far as I can see it.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
And I just like to ask a question. Talking about this non-duality, Hinduism, Buddhism. Okay, who makes non-duality? right now in your mind? Who's making it? Who makes that concept? So Bem said the Buddha taught that all things are created by mind alone, right? And that comes from the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Flower Garden Sutra, or in Chinese called Huayan Sutra. So in Korea, there's this story of a great sutra master talking this sutra for many, many, many weeks. And it was very wise, very illuminating. And at the end of the talk, all the people there was really impressed. Then he said, everything is created by mind alone. Then one young boy monk, very young, and usually it takes a young boys to ask these questions. He stood up and said, you're a great master, your teaching is very wonderful. Everything is created by mind alone. But who created mind? What creates mind? So, and then this great master was stuck. He checked in his mind all the pages of the sutra, cannot find an answer. So what creates mind? What creates duality? That's the question, I think, that will help to guide you to a appreciation of what it is. What is duality? What is non-duality?
So who created the mind? Any response or answer from Ben or Giuliano? Or non-verbal answer from both of you?
We already answered him.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I'm joking.
That's how Buddha did it. Buddha used to use this trick. He wouldn't answer. He would just keep his silence, and this was the answer.
Yeah.
So, Giuliano, thank you for reminding.
Okay, now back to the back to the audience question from from Dr. Matia. Samiksha, you would like to read it?
Okay. So it's question for Bem. Most Mahayana texts refer to the Sarvastivada tradition or related traditions rather than specifically the Theravada as just mentioned. Could you please mention which is the text that you are referring to where the Theravada tradition specifically is mentioned? It's for Brother Bem.
Yeah. Actually, I don't remember right now where it comes from. I just remember the words in Tibetan. But I don't remember exactly the text. I need to see it. Probably later if I will try to write Matya to answer the question, because right now I don't remember the name of the text, unfortunately.
Okay, I think last question for tonight. We talk about other types of quality of wisdom or prajñā or paññā, like Myong An Sunim mentioned, the non-judgmental, and sometimes we talk about humor, lightheartedness, the juicy type of quality of wisdom. So I think it's time for us to have a juicy conclusion about what is wisdom from each and every one of you. Maybe you start from Giuliano. Your wisdom words.
My pass will be the last one to answer.
Okay, then we start from.
This is wise. So this is already a demonstration of wisdom.
Okay, it's good. Good manifestation of wisdom. Ben, why don't we start from you?
Actually, I didn't have anything to say or add, but I would like to say that everything is created when you say from the Chitta Matra point of view that everything is created by mind. Mind itself is created by mind. Mind creates everything and creates itself, and it creates samsara and nirvana, and it creates kleshas and wisdom, and creates everything if you look from the Chitta Matra point of view. And so when you ask who created the mind, was it the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, mind creates the mind. There is nobody and nothing that can create anything besides the mind. Mind created everything, and even our today's meeting and nice dialogue, nice talk, it's also created by mind, by different kinds of mind, by different kinds of functioning of our minds. And concluding my part, and probably like a part of the conclusion of our 3 meetings, I would like to say that it was very fruitful for me personally. I'm very thankful for all the people who participated, and I would like to say that it was very nice and constructive in regard that we firstly talked about the ethics, and this is very basic foundation for everything in Buddhist practice. Then we talked about meditation, and as we found out during our last meeting, we found out that the meditation is based on the ethics, and it's not possible to practice meditation without the basic ethics. And now that we are talking about wisdom, probably it seems to me that it's quite obvious that the meditation by itself is not the eventual, or not the eventual goal of Buddhist practice. Meditation is also one of the means to develop our prajna, to develop wisdom in order to obtain Buddhahood. So these 3 are undividable. These are the main points of Buddhist practice. They are fundamentals that should be developed. And talking about today's topic, talking about wisdom, I would like to say that when we talk about conventional wisdom, it must be developed because we need it in our everyday life. If we talk in our samsaric framework, we need to decide what's good, what's bad, what's beneficial, and what's not beneficial. And in this regard, we need to rely on wisdom. And if we talk about our practice, be it Mahayana or Theravada practice, no difference. They also need this kind of wisdom, this deep penetration, deep understanding of what we do, how we practice. And especially so if we talk about non-duality. Because in order to get out of the conceptual framework of our mind, in which our mind functions on daily basis, we need this wisdom in order to come out of this duality framework. So I think it's very, very important to stress that we need to train our wisdom. We need to strive for the methods of obtaining higher level of wisdom, and I think that's very important.
Thank you, Brother Ben. So now, Myong An Sunim, we need to hear some wisdom words from your wisdom mind.
I have no wisdom. Yeah, I mean, okay. I think we will all experience our wisdom if we can let go of our attachments to our understanding, our opinions, our own situation, condition. Because human beings are, addicted to our attachments. But if we are, then wisdom cannot grow, regardless of what it is. So, and also let go of our judgments. So be curious, pay attention, be mindful. Then you will experience what wisdom that you have and allow it to grow. But if we're only attached to what we understand, what we know, then we only can go as far as that. We can't go beyond. So, yeah, I don't think I have any wisdom to impart, actually. And but we can all practice to develop it, to go along the way. And every single one person's will has the potential to be a wise person.
Thank you for your wise words, Myong An Sunim. So now come to Dr. Giuliano.
Okay, so I had time to think about that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, thank you. First of all, I want to thank everybody. Really, I feel fortunate to be here, to learn a lot, and to stay in this fantastic atmosphere. This said, I think that I took this time to actually to clean up many things that we said about wisdom and Paññā. Of course, there is material to speak about for centuries, maybe. So I would say maybe I will simplify as much as possible. I will stick to that. I'll condense that into this practical, I think, thing. That is that Paññā, wisdom is investigation on the one hand, and the contemplation on the other hand, of the way things are. This leads to liberation, and that liberation is the true knowledge, true wisdom, and authentic compassion. So I think that this is, at least should be the minimum compass that we should take with us, speaking of Paññā.
Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, Ben and Myong An Sunim. And now we have reached to
Thank
the
you,
end
everyone.
of this series of discussion about wisdom. And then before that, we have discussed about the sila, and then also what we call this meditation, samadhi. So now we would like to invite each and every one of you to say a dedication prayer according to your own language or your own tradition. Maybe you start with Myong An Sunim.
So these are the 4 great vows. Sentient beings are numberless, we vow to save them all. Delusions are endless, we vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite, we vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable, we vow to attain it. May all beings be well, happy, and safe.
Thank you, Myong An Sunim. Now perhaps Dr. Giuliano.
Sukho viveko tuttassa sutada massa passatu avyapajjam sukam loke panabhuteso samyamo sukha viragata loke kamanam samatikkamo asmi manassa yovinayo etambe paramansukam. Seclusion is happiness. Letting go of sense desire is happiness. Non-aversion is happiness, but the ultimate happiness is the dissolution of self, of the presumption I am.
Thank you. Big thank you to Dr. Giuliano. Now, Brother Ben.
Chamba babo jidara kembada kudo zambo de yande shende adeda kunge jeza daloji geba deda tajara tungu disa jeba geba tanjegi ngawa gana chodo ngawa de dage gebe zabadi kunge sambo jejera tungu bharegi. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there will be an announcement for the Saddharma project. So we are going to have a little break on the next Sunday, which is on the 3rd of October, 2021. And we'll be launching a new website very soon. And let's talk about our upcoming events for the October then. So Samiksha, can you announce to us what is the next program?
Yes.
Which is Samiksha's series actually.
Event on 10th of October on Sunday. It's a conversation on the Madhyamaka School of Buddhist Philosophy. And second, we have a guided meditation session of Finding Security in Uncertainty, conducted by Venerable Tenzin Dasil on 17th October. And the third event is, this is the Sattva project, Joyful Living Through Arts, which will be on 24th of October. So please to join. Oh, again we have one more. How to meditate correctly, Shunyata and his view, meditation and action. It's a
Part
daily
two.
dharma series and common dialogue between Buddhist meditative tradition, part 2. So it will be on 31st of October. It should be on Sunday.
So welcome to join our program, and see you guys very soon. Thank you. Bye bye and good night.